Hey everyone, I'm Anya Esma, and today we are going to talk about some shadows that I've worked on recently with regards to something that bothers me about people. So I'm going to name like 4 things that annoy me about people that really make me intense and aggressive sometimes, and why I think that is and how I'm reflecting on that, rather than just saying, oh, that's my character, I'm just intense, I hype people up, that's how I am, just excusing that behavior. Instead, thinking about, why am I like this? Why does it bother me so much? Since childhood, I have not liked to see myself in the role of being helpless, not being able to heal myself, take care of myself, or deciding my own fate, something being outside of my control. All of these things since childhood I've had a resistance against. So I want to talk about how that manifests in my adult life and how I sort of deal with that and try to be less intense or less triggered when certain things happen. And that also means that I can have more compassion for other people, because the more resistance you have to a topic, the less you will be able to feel compassion for people who are in a situation that you have a resistance to. I'm going to be very honest about that and also speak about how that relates to my own shadow work, because usually the things that bother you about others, you know how it is. It usually means that something is bothering you about yourself, or you have a weakness in that area. So let's talk. If you haven't seen my face before and you want to see it again, do subscribe. If you don't want to see my face, just click off the video. So yes, let's talk about the 4 things that bother me about people and what that says about me and my own shadow work. The first thing that very much annoys me about other people, and I'm not saying this to seem positive, I'm saying this in the sense that it literally irks me. And if someone acts like this, I will become aggressive if I don't check myself. It's when people don't stand up for themselves, or they don't know how to say no. I get very intense when it comes to hyping people up, and that can be positive, but it can also go a little bit too intense, because the more important a person is to me, the more I want them to see their own value and stand up for themselves. And sometimes I can go to extremes to make people realize that, and I become a little bit too intense. And I think as I've become older, I always thought that maybe this was just my Aries energy coming out, my fire energy, that I want people to realize their value. But in truth, I think this reveals about me that I have an issue with helplessness. And a lot of the pet peeves and annoyances and grievances I have with people that I reveal in this video are actually related to helplessness. And I have a great resistance to that, which can be good in some ways, because I stand up for myself. I say no if I don't want to. I don't feel like I have to please other people overly a lot of the time. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It really depends. It's complex, but at the root of it, I want to feel like I'm in control and that I am empowered to make my own decisions, act the way I want to act, etc. So that was the first thing. Let me know in the comments if this bothers you as well. And I don't just mean bothers, I mean like sets you off. Okay, so number 2 is similar. When people stay in victim mode and don't see that they have the power to change something, to change what is happening to them. They just act like everything is happening to them, it's not their fault, and their life is unfair. So that leads to a lot of complaints, a lot of self-pity, and I do have patience for that. Obviously, sometimes we just have to, if something bad happens to us, grieve it. But depending on what it is, a lot of the time it is within our power to change certain aspects of it, to change our outlook on it. And I don't mean this in the sense of spiritual bypassing where I'm like, oh, something terrible happened to you. Well, see the positive in it and forget all about the negative parts. That's not what I mean here. It's more about shifting your mindset sooner or later and seeing where you have power. It's not being deluded and thinking that you have power over absolutely everything and that bad things can't happen to you. They can, but do see how you can handle them, how you can take responsibility, and how you can act in an empowered way. So if I see people getting stuck in the victim role and basically blaming everything that happens to them on the outside world, on the circumstances that they live under, on their environment, then they are obviously not taking accountability for their own part in creating that environment, staying in that environment, not making changes to their circumstances and just staying where they are. That's not to say that I don't recognize privilege. Obviously, there are people who have it a lot harder, depending on your race, your education, your family system that you live in, the neighborhood you live in, the school that you were able to go to, etc. All of these factors count, yes, but I think sometimes in putting so much emphasis on these things, we forget where our power lies, because everyone has in their core some power to change where they are at, even on a small scale. And if someone just gets so stuck in this victimhood and in this negativity of why me, I can't do anything, why do things keep happening to me, etc., that's where I get a little bit concerned and impatient with people. The third thing that bothers me is something I've noticed online lately, because there's more manifestation talk going on. And that is delusion. But hear me out. I'm not talking about positive delusion where you basically think that you're a blessing to everyone that you're around, that you can achieve whatever you want to achieve, you can make as much money as you want to make, etc., etc. It's sort of delusional, but also sort of positive. It's okay. But I feel like there are a lot of manifestation people creating content out there and displaying themselves as having everything in order to be believed by other people. You know, you only believe someone if you think they manifested all of that using the techniques that they mentioned. Now, the issue is they often use their channels as a method of manifestation. And I've noticed that with people a lot, where they say things that you can tell are not true about them or their life, but they are basically speaking it into existence, speaking it to people who are listening to them in order to manifest it. And I think that is drawing people into your delusion, and I don't think that's positive. I see the power of affirmations, of manifestation techniques that revolve around sort of deluding yourself into thinking you already have what you want, but then taking it to another level and communicating that you already have these things to other people. That's where I think it gets problematic. So I think we need to be mindful of that when we listen to manifestation coaches, etc. Because honestly, it's sort of the same as people renting out expensive cars for their sales videos and saying, I made this much money, this is my Lamborghini because I'm rich AF. Buy my course. You know, it's sort of the same for manifestation people who say they already have everything and they got it through manifestation, but they sort of excuse it to themselves probably by saying, I am speaking these things into existence. I am living in this world where I am perfect and I have a great house, I have a great car, or whatever they want to manifest, or I am different, I am patient, I am whatever they want to be. And I think that leads to a culture of not admitting mistakes or weaknesses, and I don't think that's a good thing. So that bothers me a lot when I watch people's videos and I can tell that they are lying. I can tell that they are just pulling other people into their delusion, and I don't like that. I hope that this came across as what I mean it to come across as, and not as something else. I don't know if I explained it well. So let me know in the comments if you ever also got that feeling that someone is saying something that's not true about themselves, about their character, or the advice that they give is not really something they live by themselves, but it's just something they say in order to manifest it for themselves. And the fourth thing I want to speak about with regards to also helplessness is when people tell me that they have to do certain things. I think I was born with the mindset of someone who's very autonomous and rebellious, and my upbringing definitely supported that. So I feel very, very, very empowered towards my own decisions, my actions, my thoughts, my environment. I feel like I have a lot of control over it. And I think other people were not born with that luxury, and I understand that, but I think it's something you have to work on. And a lot of the time when we talk about self-compassion and self-understanding, we suppress this need for accountability, for taking accountability for our actions. And this whole I have to do certain things attitude is not helping. I want to make clear that obviously you have to do certain things to survive, you know? I wouldn't go up to someone who lives in America, which basically has no healthcare system, and they're working themselves to death. And I'm like, why don't you just go to the hospital? You don't have to keep working, you know? They do kind of. Otherwise they can't pay their bills. They don't have a healthcare system, so they would have to pay a lot. Yeah. So that's unrealistic. But what I want to draw people's attention to is that a lot of the time people have more control than they think they have. Because even in your job, in certain situations, you can set boundaries, or you can say no, or with regards to your family, your friends, your partner, your whole environment, you have more leverage than you think you do. Because in childhood, a lot of people are just taught to endure certain things. You're taught you cannot change certain things and you have to accept them. And this mindset carries on into adulthood. And then you're not even able to see or conceive of all of the ways in which you do have leverage to change your situation. I'm not saying that everything, you know, that happens to you is your own fault. That whole idea, it's not. Obviously, but still I think people miss opportunities for where they really have more power than they think they do, and they accept their reality instead of trying to change it further. And then they get pampered by other people who say, yes, you don't have as much opportunities as other people. You were born in a tough environment, in a tough family, in a problematic neighborhood, so it's true that you have limitations. So forgive yourself for not being in a different place in life. And all of that is true. All of that is a good understanding to have about your upbringing, but you also have to see that in the present you can make changes. You can change things positively, and not just be like, yeah, I had a tough life, that's why I'm not further in life and I can't make it. So yes, this whole video I think was kind of about victimhood or helplessness. I'm realizing this as I'm ending it because I wanted it to be about more facets or aspects of my psyche or my shadow work that I'm doing, or the issues that I have with other people. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of this revolved around those topics of helplessness, of victimhood, of feeling like you are stuck and cannot change what's happening to you. And I think that's interesting. Right now, I struggle with that because there are people in my environment who act like that and who think like that. And I can tell that mindsets from their childhood stay in their head, and basically they keep thinking that they are limited in a lot of ways, even though they are grown up. you know? And I think that's also where inner child healing can come in, because your inner child is oftentimes what is blocking you, because it learned that there are limits to what it can and cannot do, to what it can and cannot control, that parents can basically send you where they want, take you wherever they want, do with you whatever they want, because you cannot decide, oh, I want to stay home and not go to the supermarket if you're 6 years old. So these patterns stay until adulthood, and I see that in my family and sometimes also my friends. And I think that's why it triggers me so much a lot of the time, because I don't have these limitations, and sometimes I lack the understanding that other people do. So thinking about it and reflecting about it, it gives me a more level perspective on it and makes me less intense when people come to me and say, oh, I cannot change this thing about my life, etc., or the world is so cruel to me, etc. You know, these sorts of narratives, I have more understanding for them than I did before. So there's just some shadow work that I did with regards to that. As I was editing, I realized that I didn't record any outro because I was in my head realizing that the video had gone differently from what I thought it would go like. So that's why I just forgot to film it. I don't want this video to come across as me being one of those people, as I've said multiple times, who says everything that happens to you is your fault. Your living circumstances are your own fault. Your privilege is your own responsibility or fault, or your lack of privilege. Or if you get sick in your life, it's your own fault. You know, all these sort of law of attraction people who misunderstand the whole concept and think that everything that happens to you is under your control. I don't want to sound like that. But I do want people to realize that there are more opportunities than they might realize to take control of their life. And that is what mostly triggers me about interactions, when I notice that people completely push away accountability or control of their own life. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.